They say the little things are what make a family. I believe that, maybe too much. I believed it so much that I was willing to give up my own dreams, to make sure my little brother never had to give up his. My name is Emily Rosario. I'm 23 years old, and I've never once celebrated my own birthday properly. But next week? Next week, I'm throwing the biggest, most perfect, most unforgettable 18th birthday party my brother Noah could ever dream of. Because he deserves at least one perfect memory before the world starts to ask too much of him, the way it always did with me. It was almost midnight when I finally clocked out of the second shift at Calico's Cafe. My apron smelled like grease and cinnamon and my back ached in that deep way you feel when you've been on your feet since sunrise. I had just enough energy left to check the party budget again on the bus ride home, my fingers flicking nervously through my crinkled notebook. A band, a cake, decorations, and enough food to feed 20 teenagers, most of them bottomless pits in human form. The numbers barely worked, but I was determined to make it happen. The idea came to me 6 weeks ago when I found Noah's crumpled list of 18th birthday maybe ideas, shoved behind our microwave. It wasn't even a real list, more like scribbled half-thoughts: banned from open mic, midnight cake, Haley maybe, with a bunch of question marks. But the moment I read it, I felt it like a pull. It was the first time in years he'd even dared to hope for something special. I remember how small he looked the first time he crawled into my bed after Mom died. He was 10, sobbing into his Captain America pajama top, and I was barely 15, with no clue how to be anything but his sister. But that night I became more. I became the person who kept the bills paid, who packed his lunches, who remembered the parent-teacher nights. I never asked for that role, but I took it with both hands. So yes, I was going to throw him this party. Even if it meant scraping together tips, canceling my own Netflix account, skipping dinners out with coworkers, and pawning the last necklace Mom gave me. Because Noah was turning 18, and I wanted him to know, really, truly know, that someone out there thought he was worth celebrating. Back at our apartment, I crept into the tiny shared kitchen and grabbed the birthday binder. Yes, I had a whole binder. I even labeled the tabs: vendors, decor, guest list, Haley. God, Haley. I'll be honest, when Noah first brought her around, I felt this weird, quiet jealousy. Not because she was taking him away, but because she got to see this version of him I rarely did anymore. The smiling, goofy, teenage Noah, the one who still believed he had time. I had reached out to her a week ago, asking if she could help me figure out his favorite songs and what kind of food he and his friends liked. She responded quickly at first. Said she'd check with his friend group and get back to me. But that was 4 days ago. Since then, just 2-word replies. Busy, sorry. Maybe burgers. Vague stuff, and always late. I tried not to read into it. Teenagers, right? They flake. But then there was that moment 2 days ago. I was coming down the hall after work, arms full of plastic streamers and a box of vintage light bulbs I found on discount, and I heard Haley's voice through the door. She was on speakerphone with someone, laughing hard. It was the kind of laugh that sticks to the corners of your mind. Something about the tone, too mean, too performative, made me pause. But I shook it off. She was probably just being a teenager, cracking jokes. They laugh about dumb things. It's fine. Except, the way she said, she really thinks she's doing something big, before the voice on the other end cut in with a mocking, "It's kind of sad," made my chest tighten. The she could have been anyone. It probably wasn't me. Right? The next morning, I pushed the doubt away with caffeine and cake tastings. I'd saved enough to order a custom red velvet cake with white chocolate lettering that read, "Noah, you're officially grown, but still my favorite nerd." I booked a band that used to play open mics near his community college. They were barely known, but Noah always mentioned them with this dreamy look, like music meant something deep to him. I even asked one of them if they'd learn his favorite song, Astro Boy, just for him. The hard part was getting his friends to commit. I messaged all 5 of his closest friends from his phone one night after he'd passed out studying. "Hey, this is Emily. Planning a surprise birthday for Noah, need your help. Can I count on you to come through? Their replies were underwhelming. Maybe. That's cool. Let me check. No enthusiasm. No real promises. And the worst part? None of them had followed up. But I refused to spiral. Maybe they were just playing it cool. Maybe they were waiting for the week of to confirm. Teenagers are like cats, you think they hate you until they purr in your lap. Still, the more I planned, the more I noticed the silences. The long pauses after my questions. The little laughs between messages, like there was something I didn't know. But I kept going. I always keep going. And now, I'm sitting at the kitchen table with paper lanterns in my lap, glue on my fingers, and Spotify blaring songs I don't like but know he does. I'm doing it for him, for the boy who held my hand the day we spread Mom's ashes and asked me in the smallest voice if he could still believe in birthdays that he could. He should. And I was going to make damn sure of it, but there was one thing I couldn't shake, no matter how hard I tried. It was Haley's voice, that brittle laugh echoing down the hallway like the creak of a door you didn't want opened. She really thinks she's doing something big. What did that mean? Why did it sound so familiar, like the same tone girls used in high school when they were pretending to be your friend while planning to humiliate you? I shook my head. No. This was for Noah. And if there was something I didn't know, something I wasn't seeing, it could wait until after the candles were blown out, but I couldn't help noticing, none of them had asked what time the party was. Not one. There's something about holding a lighter in one hand and a melting cake in the other that makes time feel cruel. The backyard was perfect. Or at least, it had been. Hours ago, it had looked like something out of a magazine for earnest sisters trying too hard. The paper lanterns I stayed up past midnight to finish were strung across the trellis, their soft pastels fluttering in the breeze like quiet little prayers. The banner I hand-painted, despite my terrible brushwork and the ache in my wrist, hung proudly above the fence. Happy 18th, Noah, you made it. I'd set up folding chairs in a semicircle under the old fig tree. I arranged the snack table twice, repositioned the napkins into a fan shape, and even lit one of those overpriced citronella candles that make everything smell like lemon and disappointment. The indie band, yes, the one Noah loved, was doing their sound check around 3:15. They were all smiles and polite thanks for the sandwiches I made them. I told them I expected a big crowd. I told them it was going to be something special. It's funny how silence has a different weight depending on the hour. At 4 p.m., I was still hopeful. I told myself teenagers run late. Maybe Haley had coordinated a group arrival for dramatic effect. Maybe they were stopping somewhere first to pick up balloons or something equally sweet and thoughtful. By 4:45 p.m., I started texting. A few light-hearted messages to Noah, on your way? You better not be hiding somewhere and planning a big entrance winking face with tongue. I sent a group message to the handful of friends who had given me non-committal maybes. Hey. We're here and ready. Cake is out, band's warming up, musical notes, party popper. At 5:10 p.m., I lit the candles on the cake anyway. The wind kept threatening to blow them out, so I cupped my hand around the flames and waited. I thought maybe they'd pull into the driveway with balloons flapping out of a car window, laughter spilling out before the doors even opened. I sat there for 25 minutes, fingers cramping around the lighter, watching those candles flicker and melt into little rivers of wax. The frosting on the cake began to slump slightly on one side, the sun hitting it with merciless angles. Red velvet and cream cheese, Noah's favorite, slowly becoming an edible metaphor for disappointment. Still no one came. Not even a car slowing down. Not a rustle from the side gate. Not one goddamn text. My phone finally buzzed. My heart leapt before I even saw the screen. Maybe it was Noah apologizing for running late. Maybe Haley with some last-minute change of plans. It wasn't either of them. It was Laura, one of his quieter friends, someone I'd only interacted with briefly while coordinating rides. A single Instagram story. No caption, just music and chaotic teenage laughter. At first, it looked like nothing. Just a quick pan across a crowded living room filled with string lights and red cups. But then the frame froze at the cake. It was perched on a kitchen island, surrounded by plastic forks and discarded wrapping paper. It wasn't exactly like mine, but the shape, the icing, even the lettering, slightly messier, more rushed, looked eerily familiar. I squinted. Pinched to zoom. "Noah, you're officially grown," was scrawled across it in blue this time instead of white. And that's when the cold started crawling up my back. Because the next photo? The one after the cake. It was a group selfie, wide angle, all grins, red Solo cups raised. Noah was dead center, arms slung around Haley and another guy I didn't recognize. The caption? Written in Haley's unmistakable lowercase sarcasm. "No cringe speech this time, face with tears of joy, partying face." My hands started to shake. I rewatched the story 3 times, hoping I'd misread something, missed a piece of context that would explain it all. Maybe this was a pre-party. Maybe they were heading here next. Maybe someone just made a second cake because mine was late. My thumb hovered over Noah's name in my contacts. I pressed call. 1 ring. 2. 4. Voicemail. I tried Haley. Straight to voicemail. Then I started texting, rapid fire, no longer trying to sound chill or upbeat. "Noah, where are you? Did plans change? I set everything up, no one told me. Are you okay? Please respond." I didn't realize I was crying until my thumbs slipped on the screen from the moisture. The band, still halfway through their idle warm-up, noticed me pacing by the snack table, and the lead singer, Darren, I think, walked over, concern etched into his sunburned face. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. I nodded too fast. I think there was some kind of mix-up," I stammered, wiping my face and trying to smile through the sickening realization blooming in my chest. They must have changed the plan last minute. Maybe they all went to someone's house first and forgot to text me. Darren looked down at the untouched rows of folding chairs, the melting cake, the cooler full of soda I'd dragged from the corner store, and then back at me. He didn't say what he was clearly thinking. Instead, he offered the kind of smile you give someone when you're not sure if they're confused or heartbroken. "We can still play a set if you want." "Might help," he offered, awkward and kind. I shook my head. I think I'm gonna pack up." He gave me a nod and turned back toward the other guys, muttering something. They began quietly packing up their gear without complaint, without making me feel any more pitiful than I already did. Somehow, their silence was worse than pity. I sat back down by the cake, stared at it, and whispered, "He didn't even tell me." That's when the real pain started to hit. Not in a burst. It was slower, like frostbite setting in, first numbing, then a creeping burn. Because it wasn't just about today. It wasn't just the ghosted texts or the empty yard. It was 10 years of sacrifice. It was missed dances and canceled dates, overtime shifts and secondhand jeans. It was every parent-teacher meeting where I showed up instead of our dad. Every flu Noah had where I stayed up all night with a wet cloth and a thermometer. Every damn birthday where I pulled something together even when I had nothing. And they had planned something behind my back. They made another cake. They chose not to tell me. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't a miscommunication. That was a decision. I stared at the group photo again, fingers trembling as I zoomed in on their happy faces. No one looked guilty. No one looked like they had forgotten anyone. They looked like people having a good time at a party they planned together. Without me. The overlay text repeated in my mind like a mocking whisper, "No cringe speech this time, face with tears of joy." That was about me. I had given a toast at Noah's 16th. I remember because I wrote it in my notebook for 2 weeks, trying to make it perfect. I wanted to tell him how proud I was. How much it meant to watch him grow into someone kind and smart, despite everything. I had cried a little near the end. People clapped. He smiled. And apparently, it was cringe. It was never about the speech. It was about who I was to them, the stand-in parent they tolerated but never wanted to bring to the table. The sister who stayed behind so he could move forward. The background character in their highlight reel. I wiped my eyes with the hem of my shirt, realizing too late that it was streaked with frosting. My stomach turned. I looked around again, at the empty chairs, the half-deflated balloons, the gentle sway of the banner that now felt like a joke. I wanted to scream. To smash the cake against the fence. To call Haley and leave a voicemail so blistering she'd feel it in her teeth. But I didn't. Instead, I sat in the plastic chair, turned my phone face down on the table, and stared at the candles. They'd gone cold. The wax puddled and hardened into strange, jagged shapes like frozen tears. I thought of all the moments I had rationalized over the past few months. The missed calls. The vague texts. The way Haley had stopped smiling when I walked into a room. The way Noah started leaving the apartment faster and coming back quieter. I had told myself I was imagining it. I wasn't. I don't know how long I sat there before the band finally left, offering weak waves and promises to keep in touch if you ever need live music again. The sun had dipped behind the houses, and the first chill of evening set in. I lit another candle, not for celebration for morning, not of the party, but of something deeper, something I hadn't realized until just now had died a slow, quiet death long before this afternoon. Trust. Hope, belonging, whatever it was I thought I had with Noah, whatever invisible bond that had tied us together since the day our mother passed away, that string had snapped, and I hadn't even heard it break until now. I didn't set out to crash a party. I didn't change clothes with revenge in mind or rehearse cutting lines in the mirror. When I finally stood up from that plastic chair in the backyard, all I knew was that I couldn't stay in that silence a second longer. The house felt unfamiliar when I stepped back inside, like someone else's memories had been pinned to the walls overnight. The kitchen was clean, untouched. The cake sat lopsided on the counter, a sad little monument to a version of me who still believed in birthdays and good intentions. I left it there, candles half sunken, and walked past the fridge photos of me and Noah through the years. 4th grade science fair. His middle school graduation. The blurry Polaroid of him sleeping on my shoulder at Mom's gravesite. I didn't take any of them down. I just looked. Then I turned and walked out the door. It wasn't rage. If it had been rage, I might have screamed. Thrown something. Sent a text that said, "I saw what you did," in all caps. No. What drove me to that other party was a slow-burning ache so disorienting that I needed to look him in the eyes and ask, why? Not as an accusation. As a sister who couldn't quite believe she'd been uninvited from her own role in his life. I didn't bother fixing my hair. I didn't wipe away the smudges under my eyes. I threw on a gray hoodie and jeans, grabbed my phone, and slid Haley's address, one she'd texted me months ago for a rideshare arrangement, into the map. As I waited for the bus, my legs bounced restlessly, my mind pinging between potential explanations. Maybe there had been a second party and I wasn't supposed to see the first. Maybe Noah hadn't known they were planning it. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, a wrong turn that spiraled too far, and maybe the cake I made didn't look just like the one in their photos. Maybe that was my imagination. I knew better. But I still hoped the bus let me off a block away from Haley's house. I walked the rest of the distance under streetlights that buzzed like they were trying to warn me. The music from inside was loud enough to pulse in the pavement. Laughter floated out through the cracked windows, easy, careless laughter that made my fingers twitch with nerves. For a full minute, I stood at the edge of her driveway, unsure if I'd actually go through with it. I imagined walking in, seeing Noah's face light up with guilt or remorse or, hell, even surprise. I imagined the music stopping, people realizing what they'd done, and Noah pulling me aside to say, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. I held on to that vision like it was a life raft. The front door was unlocked. I stepped in quietly, like someone entering a stranger's home after a fire. No one noticed me at first. The house was packed, bodies shoulder to shoulder, music bouncing off the walls, the smell of cheap alcohol and sweat hanging heavy in the air. It took me a few minutes to make my way to the living room, where most of the crowd had gathered. And then I saw him. Noah was standing on the far side of the room near the kitchen island, a paper crown slightly askew on his head. He was laughing, hard, at something Haley had just whispered to him. Her hand rested on his arm. For a second, I couldn't breathe, then he looked up, his smile froze. His hand dropped. Haley turned, eyes widening like she'd seen a ghost rise from the floorboards. She clutched her phone a little tighter and muttered something to the girl beside her, who glanced my way and then away, embarrassed. The crowd didn't go silent all at once. That would have been too cinematic. But little pockets of quiet started forming as people noticed me, the girl in the hoodie with smudged eyeliner, standing with her hands clenched in her sleeves and a look on her face that made the room feel colder than it had any right to be. I stepped forward slowly, my voice still lost somewhere in my throat. Noah didn't move. He didn't come to me. He didn't say anything. "Hey," I said finally, my voice hoarse from hours of not using it. "I think you all forgot someone." Noah opened his mouth like he was going to say something. But he didn't. Instead, he looked around, at his friends, at Haley, at the banner over the couch that said, "Officially grown," in bubble letters, and then back at me like I'd just interrupted something sacred. I pulled my phone from my pocket, hands shaking slightly. "This won't take long." Still no one moved. "I wasn't going to do this," I said, voice steadier now. "I was going to go home. Pretend it didn't matter. Tell myself maybe there was a miscommunication." But then I remembered something. I held up the screen, thumb poised above a folder labeled "Party Thread, Synced." I remembered that Noah once borrowed my tablet last month when his was dead. And he forgot to log out. That got their attention. A few people shifted uncomfortably. One girl near the back giggled nervously, then went silent as I continued. "Imagine my surprise," I said, "when I opened the tablet this afternoon, desperate to figure out what went wrong, and saw this." I tapped the first message, reading aloud. "Haley, Emily's planning some kind of backyard thing, lol. I told her we might be busy. She didn't get the hint. Travis, ugh, if she does another speech I'm gonna fake a seizure. Sarah, please no poem again, I beg, face with tears of joy. Haley, she'll probably make it all about her. Noah, you've been my entire life since mom died, cue sobbing. Noah, she means well but she always makes everything so heavy." The room was silent now. Every syllable felt like peeling back skin. I let the words hang there for a moment, then looked directly at Noah. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't even moving. His face was pale, jaw tight, hands hanging uselessly at his sides. I took a deep breath. Not because I needed it, but because I knew if I didn't, the grief sitting in my chest would tear itself loose. "I thought I was your sister," I said quietly. "Not your punchline." Still, no one spoke. I didn't wait for an apology. I didn't wait for excuses or gasps of regret. I didn't need to hear anyone say, "We didn't mean it." I knew they had meant it. Maybe not with cruelty. Maybe not with intention. But with enough truth to burn. I turned toward the door. And then finally, Noah spoke. I paused but didn't turn around. "You always make everything heavy," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "It's like, even a party turns into a funeral with you." That was the moment the final thread inside me snapped. Not because he yelled. Not because he hated me. But because he believed that. Because he said it with the same shrugging resignation someone uses when returning a gift they never wanted. I nodded once, tears finally starting to burn their way down. "I know," I said softly. "Because I was the one who stayed behind to carry the weight when you couldn't." And then I walked out. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just slow enough to remember the look on Haley's face. Just slow enough to let the silence speak. Grief, I learned, isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet creak of the hallway floor at 3 a.m. when you pass a room you no longer bother to glance into. Sometimes it's the way you start skipping songs you used to love because they remind you of car rides you never realized were rare until they were extinct. And sometimes, grief is knowing someone you love is still alive, still breathing, still laughing somewhere, and choosing not to speak your name. The first week after the party passed like fog. I didn't cry right away. The tears came later, weeks later, in sudden, inconvenient floods like leaks in a dam you didn't know existed. In those early days, I didn't scream, or rage, or trash Noah's room like a broken-hearted sister in some melodrama. Instead, I simply stopped. I stopped calling. I stopped checking his location. I didn't mute him on social media, I deleted the apps entirely. Not in a bold statement, but because every icon became a warning label. Every notification a needle. The band's payment envelope still sat unopened in my desk drawer. I hadn't even cashed the refund they offered. I wasn't sure why. Maybe because opening it would make it final. Or maybe because, deep down, I was still waiting for someone, anyone, to knock on my door and ask, "Can we talk?" No one came. My job at Calico's Cafe offered a strange reprieve. The rhythm of pouring coffee, bussing tables, and smiling at tourists gave me structure I couldn't find elsewhere. My manager, Miriam, didn't pry when I asked to skip the morning shifts. She just nodded and gave me the late afternoons, where the quiet was thick and the regulars gentler. It was Miriam, actually, who slipped a therapist's card into my hand after I spaced out while restocking napkins and knocked an entire tray of glasses to the floor. "You're not in trouble," she said softly, placing a hand on my arm. But I know that look. I've had that look. The business card was simple, white with pale blue text, Dr. Lena Cross, licensed clinical social worker. I kept it in my pocket for 4 days before calling. By the time I found myself sitting on a worn green couch across from Dr. Cross, I was already rehearsing reasons not to speak. But she didn't ask me to tell the whole story right away. Instead, she asked one question that unraveled me instantly. "Who do you miss?" I stared at the ceiling, my throat tight, the words fragile. "He's not dead," I whispered. "No," she said. "But you're grieving him like he is." That's when she explained something called ambiguous loss, the kind of mourning you do when someone is physically present but emotionally gone. When reconciliation is possible but unlikely. When the pain doesn't come from absence, but from betrayal and silence layered together until you can't tell them apart. "It's grief without a funeral," she said gently. "And it's one of the hardest kinds to carry." I don't know what made me break that day. Maybe it was hearing someone else say what I couldn't name. Maybe it was being seen without judgment. Or maybe it was just that someone finally acknowledged that I was mourning something real. I cried for 45 minutes straight. After that, I started going weekly. I didn't talk about Noah every session. Sometimes I talked about Mom, how young she'd been when she got sick, how terrified I'd felt keeping her symptoms a secret because she didn't want Noah to know. Sometimes I talked about high school and how I skipped prom to stay home and help Noah with a diorama for his 5th grade project. Other times I sat in silence, just breathing. And sometimes, sometimes, I wondered out loud if I had been too much. Too present, I told Dr. Cross one day. Too protective. Too responsible. I know he's a teenager. I know he wanted space. But was I, choking him without realizing? Dr. Cross didn't answer right away. Instead, she asked me to describe the year after our mom died. "He was 10, I said. I was 15. We didn't have anyone else. Dad left years before that. It was just us. I got a job at the florist. I learned how to forge her signature on permission slips. I made mac and cheese every night because it was the only thing I could make without burning the pan. I got him to school. I lied to the social worker. I made it work." She nodded slowly. "That's not control, Emily. That's survival. What you're describing isn't overbearing. That's love under pressure." Still, I couldn't shake the question. Had I become more of a parent than a sister? And if I had, was it fair to be angry that Noah never saw me as his equal? Those thoughts followed me home. One night, I stood in the hallway and looked at the photo wall. It had started small, just a few framed snapshots of us through the years, but over time, it had grown into a patchwork of childhood, sticky popsicle hands, beach trips, crooked birthday crowns. Most of them were photos I had taken. Some, I had printed at Walgreens during slow cafe shifts. I'd mounted them with tape and hope. That night, I took them down one by one. Not in anger. Not to erase him. But because they didn't feel like memories anymore. They felt like fiction. With each frame I lowered, I whispered something quiet to the girl in the photo. You tried. You meant it. You did your best. The wall was bare by midnight. The next morning, I wrote him a letter. I didn't plan to. The words just came, as if they'd been sitting in a back room of my chest waiting for permission to leave. I don't know if this will ever reach you. I don't even know if I want it to. But I need to write it. I'm not angry. I mean, maybe I was for a while. Maybe I still am in some small, quiet ways I can't name yet. But mostly, I'm just heartbroken. I know you needed space to be a teen, to be your own person, to build a world that didn't revolve around the loss we both carried differently. I know I didn't always give you room to breathe. I know my love sometimes looked like rules, like reminders, like me hovering with an extra jacket just in case. But I didn't know needing space meant erasing me. I didn't know that the girl who held your hand through hospital corridors would one day be laughed at behind her back by people you invited in. I guess that's what hurts the most. Not that you changed. But that you didn't tell me when you did. I would have listened. I would have stepped back. I would have found a way to love you from farther away. Instead, I found out through text threads and side eyes and silences. I thought we were a team. I thought everything I missed out on, college, dates, nights out, was worth it because we were building something together. A life. A family. But maybe that was just my illusion. I still love you. That hasn't changed. But I don't think I can keep reaching for someone who doesn't reach back. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. But for now, I need to heal. I hope your next birthday feels free love, Emily. I folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer beside the refund envelope and the backup copy of the party playlist. Some things didn't need to be sent to be heard. Some grief didn't need a response to be valid. That night, I sat on the couch with a cup of tea and watched the sunset slip through the living room blinds. For the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like peace trying to grow roots, and I didn't move to stop it. It was Noah's birthday again. And for the first time in a decade, I didn't start the day with a text, or a voicemail, or a plan. I didn't check his social media for clues about how he was celebrating. I didn't scroll back through old photos to find a memory to repost with a nostalgic caption. I didn't even flinch when I saw the date on my phone calendar, circled not in red pen this time, but in calm indifference. Instead, I was on a small stretch of beach 2 states south, sand between my toes and a cupcake in my backpack that I bought myself at a roadside bakery on the drive down. It was slightly squished, the icing a bit dented from the bumpy ride, but it was mine. And I intended to enjoy it. 1 year ago, I had stood in our backyard holding a lighter for candles no one showed up to blow out. 1 year ago, I had clutched my phone in disbelief as photos loaded of a party I wasn't even mentioned in. 1 year ago, I had read aloud words that etched themselves onto my bones, words that used to make my voice crack when I remembered them in the shower, in the grocery store, in the stillness before sleep. You always make everything heavy. But this year, I wasn't heavy. This year, I had made myself light again. After months of therapy, journal entries, and long walks with no destination but breath, I finally made good on the promise I had written into every calendar for the last 5 years and always postponed. I took a solo trip. Not a family trip. Not a work obligation masquerading as a getaway. Not a supportive sister act to cheer Noah on at a debate tournament or his early college orientation. Just me. The job I had now allowed for it. After leaving the cafe, I'd applied for an administrative role at a nonprofit that helped young women aging out of foster care. I didn't even expect to get an interview. But the woman who hired me said something during our first meeting that stuck with me. Sometimes it's not about what you've done, it's about what you've endured and still showed up with a heart willing to try. Since then, I'd made real friends. Not proximity friends. Not people who invited me out of pity or habit. But people who texted just to check in. Who asked me about my boundaries and respected them. Who didn't flinch when I cried in front of them the first time I admitted, I don't know how to be a sister anymore. And slowly, without ceremony or audience, I had built a new rhythm to my life. I read again. Fiction, mostly. Books with complicated women who weren't punished for taking up space. I took pottery classes, even though I was terrible. I relearned how to sit in silence without feeling the urge to fill it with effort. I even learned how to celebrate myself. Which is why I was standing on a beach in late spring, wind in my hair, toes in the water, cupcake in hand. It was nearing sunset when my phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. I hadn't been checking it much, no real reason to, but I felt the familiar twinge in my chest when I saw his name. Noah. Voicemail. I stared at the notification for a long time. Not out of fear, exactly. But because I already knew what would be inside. That aching curiosity, that old reflex to hope, hadn't vanished entirely. But it had quieted. I pressed play. His voice was deeper now, maybe from stress or simply time. Still, it had that unpracticed lilt of someone unused to apologizing without strings. Hey. I don't really know what to say exactly, and I know I probably shouldn't even be calling. I was thinking about you today. A long pause. I know things didn't go down right last year. I mean, I didn't handle it well. And I guess I just wanted to say I hope you're doing good. You always tried. You really tried. More than anyone. I miss you sometimes. Hope you're happy. Or close to it. Happy, being you, I guess. Then a soft, abrupt click. No apology. No ownership. No acknowledgement of the texts he let hang in digital space like meat hooks. No recognition of the night I stood in a room full of people I fed, protected, and quietly loved, and was met with laughter. Just vague longing. Just echoes. I listened twice, then 3 times, not because I wanted to hear him again, but because I was waiting for something more. Some hint that he had done the work. That he had unpacked it. That he finally saw me as something other than an obligation or a shield. But it wasn't there. So I pressed delete. Not in anger. Not in bitterness. But because I didn't need to carry it anymore. Healing, I'd learned, isn't a straight line. It doesn't come with banners or announcements or glittering epiphanies. It's the quiet click of delete without your hands shaking. It's being able to say, that's not enough, and knowing you're still whole. The sun dipped lower on the horizon, golden light skimming the tops of the waves like a blessing. I pulled the cupcake from my bag, unwrapped it slowly, and stuck a single candle into the center. I lit it. No one sang. No one clapped. No one took a photo. And still, I smiled. I closed my eyes and whispered, not a wish, but a truth. You were enough even when they didn't say so. Then I blew out the flame. There was no speech this time. No guests. No cake cutting. Just me, a beat-up beach towel, the sound of waves, and a cupcake slightly crushed by a paperback novel about women who chose themselves. And I had never felt more free. I used to think I lost my family that day. Turns out, I found myself. If you like this story, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell to not miss the release of the next exciting stories.